stay inside all this winter, filling out forms from a busted printer. I want to talk like Raymond Carver. I want to shut down the goddamn TV, binging on the latest sitcom, feeling guilty every second it's on. I want to put my foot through the window. I want to romanticize my head thought. Heavy boots on my throat. I need something soon. I need something soon. I can't talk to my folks. I need something soon. I need something soon.
I think we're live. Welcome to 2 Month Review, the weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter and 3%, in which for this season we are taking Ed Park's Same Bed, Different Dreams and breaking it down bit by bit, section by section, talking about it, talking about alt weeklies, talking about assassinations, secret cults, having fun, doing things. I am Chad Post from Open Letter Books. I am joined as always by Brian Wood, author of Joytime Killbox. How are you doing, Brian?
Doing great. We're kind of like the opposite of the book right now. We have different beds and same dreams, I think. Right now, you're on the road. I'm currently displaced. We're both in hotels. Yeah.
I mean, it says that we're live now. I'm going to restart this just in case because the timer went.
Mine says 52 seconds.
Yours says 52 seconds? Okay,
Yep.
Then we're going to assume that it's there.
Yeah, we're good. Plus,
we're good.
your intros are really boring, really monotonous, and always the same.
Just
So,
kinda, that's a
really?
technique, man. That's what you're supposed to do. That's podcasting 101. Keep it the same.
You're the equivalent of Joe Rogan saying, "Jamie, pull that up. Can you pull that up for me?"
Dude, I don't
Welcome
welcome
to the 2 Month Review.
I've never seen Joe Rogan, but I have now seen Pete McAfee on TV twice.
Pat.
And I think Pat. Oh yeah, did I say Pete? That was a better name, to be honest. Pete McAfee. It flows a little bit more, but Pat McAfee.
No, you're clearly not a poet because Pat Mac is much better with the repetition of the A. So
McPhee, Pete McPhee. Sounds like a cartoon cat from like some sort of shitty knockoff Australian Bluey episode. But yeah, so I've seen him. And I feel like I can do his bit maybe someday. Brother,
you have to go sleep. You got to go sleeveless, somehow sunburned in the wintertime. I don't know how that's even possible, but he's got like that Jacksonville glow going on at all times. I have watched that show. It is insufferable.
It's terrible.
It's kind of like Howard Stern, where people that hate it would watch it more or listen to it more. I feel like him and Joe Rogan and all the if I'm doing air quotes if you don't know if you're just listening to this, but the intellectual dark web, whatever that is, like, oh, we're so smart and outside the box that, like, people don't teach us, and I'm barely holding on to my job at Harvard because I said something that offended somebody, like all those people. Boy, it's hard not to hate listen and hate watch that. But.
Oh my God. The clip that I saw most recently was when he and Greenberg, also insufferable, maybe not part of the dark web, but just kind of the worst human sportscaster, and maybe Stephen A. Smith. So like a trifecta of fuckery. We're debating the FSU getting left out of the playoffs, and Pat McAfee goes nuts and starts throwing a football and kicking it. And they come on, they're like, "Don't break the set." And he's just like screaming. The only thing I ever picked up from that is he yells "brother" a lot. Brother, what do you think about this section of the book, brother?
Well, he does do WWE as well, which I don't care. It'll always be WWF. Like, screw the Panda Bears. You don't get to take their name. It's WWF.
Yeah.
So the brother checks out that it's very
Macho Man, Randy Savage.
Testosterone, needles in your ass kind of talk, right? What's up, brother? He's probably the same type of person.
See who's stronger than brother.
He's probably the exact same type of person that calls a woman darling.
Oh, hey, that gal over there was treating me right.
Fill up that coffee, would you, darling?
Shit.
Wow, you're all charisma, huh?
Wait, yeah, you don't have Riz unless you've got no sleeves. That's the new saying for 2024. Speaking of dark web and alt weeklies, which we talked about last week related to ad being on them. This isn't a weekly, but I am in Canada, home of the Great White North and the kindness of people and whatever.
And Jordan Peterson.
And Jordan fucking Peterson, which might explain this. We were at a restaurant last night, and there was this free magazine on the way out called Druthers. And as you can see, the headline on it is "Proof Weather Modification is Real." That's right. This monthly alt news weekly is a wild trip. There's all sorts of like stuff in here about like one of the headlines is the New York Times finally admits to the harm done to children, which I'm not sure what's behind that, but okay.
That's probably when they're trying to transition gender in the third trimester, most likely, because they're doing that now, as well.
That is, they're very anti that.
Yeah, that's in there. I'm sure.
They're also very anti-COVID, and there's a whole thing on their website, druthers.net, for anyone who wants to know nonsense. That is like a faux. I think it's supposed to be a satire of sorts of Trudeau giving out reparations to the Canadian people for locking them up during COVID-19 and treating them like displaced persons. So this is a real solid alternative source of information. It is. They refer to themselves as like Canada's largest independent news source or something like that. But I mean, it's like 6 pages and it's kind of shitty.
All the news that's fit to print, apparently, huh?
Yep. It's entirely funded, written, distributed, and promoted by the people for the people.
All right. Well, speaking of for the people, what did you think of this? This one covers a lot of ground. Go ahead.
Oh, nope. I misread that. Nope. Never mind. I thought I said Korean, but it didn't say Korean. So go on.
Oh, I was gonna say there's a lot of fun new stuff that's introduced in this section that we read. What'd you take from it as far as like the rundown of things? So the rundown of things,
like I think the biggest section by pages in this is the KPG history, the 1901 through 1909, which covers 3 different assassinations and introduces the like clipping of the finger, the left-hand ring finger, into the, I forget what they call it now, but like the fingerless cult or club or whatever, or secret society group, who are sort of like the KPG machinations, who are all there for trying to overthrow Emperor Ito and like or whatever he's actually called, Ito, and eventually kill him because of Japan's like hold over Korea, and a lot of the machinations to try and get Korea and Korean people to be recognized by international observers. That section's huge and has like actual historical weight, but also is really interesting. But the one that I thought we'd start with, I think, is the most scene setting for this particular section is the first one, 2333. What's the title of this one? I gotta get it open. 2333,
also known as February 3rd.
February 3rd, 33. Yeah, that's a fun trick. Like, it'd be funny if nobody ever noticed that like 2666 was like Bolaño's birthday, and everyone's like, I don't know what this 2666 means.
Yeah. That was the first thing I thought. Like I wanted to go down the rabbit hole of looking at important dates that happened on February 6th, but I was like, I don't want to do that.
I was like, my data plan is unlimited, but not that unlimited. But this one is Extradition to Gambrinus. And this introduces our third sort of like, we did have a section of 2333 at the very beginning, the one that was called The Scholars, set in 2016. And that just was like 2.5 pages, essentially 2 pages, and ended with the What is History. This one actually introduces the series itself and the author of the series. So we're getting that final like third line to this book. And it's basically, just to sum it up for anyone that's listening, Parker Jotter is a former, he was in the war, in the Korean War. His plane was shot down, or it wasn't shot down, actually. It was like he crashed after seeing what he believes was a UFO. He is captured and held as a prisoner of war in North Korea, with a fellow whose name I'm blanking out on now, who is missing part of his ring finger. And
his initials are KPG as well.
And his initials are KPG. And so you start to get like that Pinchonian like setup where there's lots of different resonances might fit together or might not.
There's the Zippo lighter that he carries with him that has KPG on it also, right? So there's like, all these little kind of like talismans of that connect and intersect with all the stories as well. Yeah.
And since we hit in this section the stuff about the ring finger, we can look, and it's already happened. You can look back, and Soon Sheen is missing his part of his ring finger on the left hand too. So
Yep.
that little nod there too.
That he hides. Yeah.
That he hides. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so Parker Jotter writes like these pulpy. He runs a electronics and sort of used goods store, one of those kind of classic Philip K. Dick sort of dudes who like deals with radios and TVs.
Shady with a heart of gold.
Yeah, and he has a spinner rack of all of his books in the front of the store, which like that's adorable. I love it. And he writes these books under the series 2333, which he claims he just like threw out there at one point in time. They're sort of popular. The first one maybe not so much, and then the second one has like a lot of fandom. And then they asked him to write a third one. His editor asked him to write another one. His editor is DM Zephyr or DMZ, which is another Korean nod.
Oh, I thought that was a Brian Wood product.
I mean, the wrong Brian Wood, the naughty Brian Wood, the canceled Brian Wood.
Yeah,
that comic book series is fantastic. Outside.
Did you watch the HBO series of it? I tried to watch an episode and I just couldn't. I don't know. It wasn't hitting right for me.
It was one of those that I feel like I might have started watching an episode, but didn't see it either. But then it was just like mysteriously gone. It never gets advertised to me. But Max, not to go off on a tangent, but Max and all those streaming services, like algorithms, and they're all fucked now. They're just all fucked.
Yeah.
In particular,
I don't really watch. I haven't seen much of Rosario Dawson since Kids, so I'm out of touch.
You don't watch Fast and the Furious?
No,
Christ. No. She is like gold in Fast and the Furious. She is amazing.
So I want to just for fun and maybe for some folks that are into it or not. Do you like science fiction?
To a degree, yeah.
Okay. There's the end hill there was almost like a pause of like, what do I say?
Well, I think that there's a complication with that. It's like liking. I can't think of a good metaphor, but if you like science fiction, if you're a science fiction fan, you know a lot. Like you're really into science fiction. I don't, not that.
Yeah, well, I know the references here, like the author of Starship Troopers. That's all I've read from.
Right.
Was it Hein? He has a German last. Yeah. So I have read Starship Troopers. I've read a little bit of Arthur C. Clarke, and I've read quite a bit of Isaac Asimov. But those are like kind of like the holy trinity, if you will, of like, sci-fi. I know like some folks get into H.P. Lovecraft and some weirder stuff like the Scientology guy.
L. Ron Hubbard.
L. Ron Hubbard.
Ron.
But I thought it was very interesting, though, that maybe it's because it's too early in the timeline of it. But this is like pre-Philip K. Dick,
right?
And like you were saying, I get like shades of Dick. Ooh. Yeah. I get shades of P.K. Dick here, which I find interesting.
Oh yeah, definitely. I know Ed Parks,
but not reference.
A Dick fan. I know Ed is like from past conversations. Like I think he was the one who talked to me about do you remember, like, it would have been probably around the time that Personal Days was coming out, so like 15 years ago, they released like 2 unpublished Philip K. Dick novels that were from they were the earliest ones that he wrote, but I don't think were ever published, but they were meant to be like literary, serious, non-sci-fi, what we refer to as the Philip K. Dick style at that point in time. And I remember he read those and had comments on them, but I don't remember what the comments were. But yeah, that's who I see too. So like, yeah, I know of a lot of those, like Asimov I read as like a kid, like because they were in like the library section, beat up paperbacks, and I know of the like many others, but in terms of like reading on a regular basis, it's pretty sparse for me. Like I did read the 3 Body Problem trilogy, which is more contemporary, but like there's a run of like reading all of the Philip K. Dick books, and then those like Kurt Vonnegut books that are kind of sci-fi.
I read Dune, but nothing else, because it's like I don't want to go down that. But yeah, like people that are into it are like they know all of it, right?
That's why I want to like put up like not really like not on the level that like people are.
Yeah, I know enough for like Jeopardy questions. Like I read a few of like Ursula K. Le Guin, and then I've read some new stuff from like Ted Chiang is putting out some marvelous sci-fi. But yeah, I mean, like I get those references, and I don't know enough to see how it influences the work that what was the last name?
Jotter. Parker Jotter. I mean, that's a very
Philip K. Dick kind of name, right?
Absolutely. But yeah, so he also I
noticed too though, like even like 2333 is like really like I guess it would be kind of original-ish for the 60s, but it's just a Jacob's Ladder kind of concept, right? Yeah. A soldier dying that's going off into another world and like mollifying the terror of the real world by creating a new one in his mind, right?
I literally just says Jacob's Ladder next to the description of that.
Yeah, Jacob's Ladder. I'm gonna get the name wrong, but like it reminds me of like if you think of like Jack London, it makes me think of like Ambrose Bierce with an occurrence at is it called Owl Creek?
Yeah.
The one where the soldier is gonna die, be hung, and he escapes, and right. Or even something like if we go to South America with like the short story The Secret Miracle.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that one?
Vaguely.
Someone's lined up and gonna get shot, and like time freezes for a moment, and the artist has time to write his masterpiece, and the time between the bullet leaves and hits him, there's like that pause in time in order to create a better future, a better reality than what is actually present. So they all have like that similar, like I feel like that's kind of like the idea with this 2333 initially. I don't know if that's what actually is going to happen or not, but
right. And it seems like it's kind of like an anthology series in a way, because he's not really necessarily. I mean, there's one thing that pops up. I thought it was in here. Now I'm not sure I'm going to see it, but
which makes it very pulp, right?
Yeah, he talks about having to, like, in the one that he's working on, they need to find the tan gun.
Yeah,
that shows up later in the KPG section too, the tan gun. So there are like resonances with that, but otherwise it feels like each one of these books, like there is some continuity that's implied within that bit, but otherwise these first three books he describes are like not related. They're sort of like the like an anthology series, and like the third one, the one that's described in depth here, the Extradition to Gambrinus, is very like Victor Laval sort of vibe, who also, I guess he's not really science fiction. He's like in between that horror speculative realm. Well, I mean, Frazon's science fiction too, like in many ways. So all those things great. But this book, like he does describe, and it doesn't connect to any of the others. In fact, it's like a meta novel about someone who gets, a ton of money to write like a trilogy of trilogies in this rich man's house where he's taken care of and he loves it. But then he realizes that the guy is burning his manuscripts as he finishes them. And so they have a discussion about, do you write for like only 10 readers? What do you write for? And he's like, you write for art's sake. I'm sure there's only 10 readers in my books anyways. That's fine. And then he finds out that they've all been burnt and is like, bummer, dude. Not so cool. But yeah, so that's in there. And again, that's another resonance of the 3 books in one, or a novel and 3 novels. 3 novels and novels.
Yeah, it's referenced again in that section. The other thing I found interesting too, that's reintroduced, is this idea of kind of reflections or shadows or doppelgangers, which we're getting as well. And in particular, the part that I really kind of leaned into it and was like, okay, this is something I'm going to be looking for more as we're reading, was when the daughter Tina talks about her reflection, and you ever think it's a different person in the mirror?
Yeah.
And then the person has a different name, and it's Anti or Anti, Anti, right? Yep. Which is Tina rearranged. Right. And then with our what I assume is our main character, Echo, right? Mm-hmm. So there's some interesting things that I think Mr. Park's playing with that as well, which is kind of cool.
Absolutely. There's one thing with going back to the 2333 series, and then there's something more important to point out. But he so this is from page 87, and you're talking about the title of it after Tina's like, well, it's dedicated to Mom. It's Mom's birthday. And he says, the shiver went through him. They picked 2333 on a whim. Zephyr liked its futuristic quality and told him to showcase the number in each subsequent book as a year, a satellite model, a crucial page of an immense cursed manuscript. Occasionally, fans wrote to ask what it quote-unquote meant, and he spun fanciful answers. but now he knew the freak had led it to him all those years ago. February 3rd, 1933 was Flora's birthday. Flora, who is his wife, who is involved with the Divine Precepts, a cult church that is believes that in 1967 the world will end. And there's an interesting point. So she's off on this trip. They have like lots of they have like their pamphlets or whatever that have like a series of those kind of what are those people? Not the Moonies, but any of those like the groups that stand outside of like the various university places I walk and are handing out like, will you be saved? Those sort of like, why is the rate of suicide rising? Why is everyone paid?
Like Jehovah's Witness is really big.
Jehovah's Witness,
right? Yeah, with the messenger and
Yep. And then he has this bit that's like kind of key to tying this all together too. So they're in Buffalo. That house on Vulcan Street was an American outpost for a Tokyo church, which turned out to be a Japanese outpost of a Korean church. It was a monster in hiding, sliding its tentacles through holes in the world, one of them oozing out through the surface right here in Buffalo. So we get back to like the Japanese, Korea, and then Buffalo connection, which is throughout the section too, because there's all the historical stuff is based around Japan's occupation of Korea and their treatment of Korea and the American government's belief that this is positive because they will modernize Korea, improve like the rice production, but basically in all examples that are given, they're extracting the wealth from and goodness from Korea and leaving people in utter poverty and worse off than they were before and not even in charge of their own space. All this has a million parallels through history, including contemporary, but I don't know that we want to touch that. I'm going to just stick with Japan and Korea, who produce really great baseball players such as Shohei Ohtani and your guy, Young-Ho Lee.
Yeah, I like the, shortly from that section you were talking about there with Flora, where they talk about that Korea is just shrimp between two whales.
Yeah.
Right. Just being completely devoured by larger organisms.
This is the section that has the most metaphors for Korea for its description, because it also includes the line that is quoted in the various reviews of they're talking about who is this? Is it Durham Stevens? I believe it's Durham Stevens, who's like, this isn't working. Korea cannot easily be turned into a colony, as his more belligerent countrymen desire. Korea is no Taiwan, which China ceded with a shrug. Taiwan is shaped like a sweet potato, there for the picking. Korea resembles a rabbit held by the ears, waiting for a chance to skip away. So like all the different kind of metaphors for Korea and its place. I think that's Ito actually that says that. But they pop up in here in general. And I think is there anything else from the 2333 section? I mean, it gives us a plot or like a cliffhanger. In that Parker Jotter's like, I don't know what to do with my next book. And his daughter's like, you got to write something to save mom's life. And he's like, okay, I'll do it. I'll write about the end of the world. And that hopefully that will get Flora's sanity back. Is the idea. Anything else from that section that you want to
kind of going back to that, like that Pynchon type of thing. I'm curious what the stamp with the electric plug and the J kind of nestled inside of it, what that's going to be or what that means.
Right, is anything? Yeah, the jotter, electric jotter.
It's got to be there for something. So I'm curious to take a look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's one other resonance that popped up here. So on page 75, Flora's talking about their kid, about Tina. And Tina was born in 1959. By summer, though, Flora had grown convinced that her real baby had been snatched at the hospital. The replicas, she insisted, were getting better every year. Replicas also pretenders, so we get another replica pretender, maybe ties into your doppelganger sort of motif of references based on like Soon's book being pretenders, replicas mentioned there. Also, that's like a Blade Runner sort of vibe. I don't know if I had anything else from this one that we haven't touched on. I like award-losing author. I think I should adapt that.
An award-losing author.
So fun. So then we can talk about Soon's section for just a bit, because this one's pretty simple. It talks a bit about gloat and what he does there, which is like help figure out like these questions or like games that people play with, which is very accurate. This is very like true to life that people play with, that gives them information that is for their predictive algorithms as to like what what people will like, what they'll be searching for, what they want to do, all the kind of stuff that like any major tech company or retail outlet, aka Amazon, Target, Google, Apple, wants to do and is actively pursuing, is to be able to figure out how to map human behavior, and they're fucking good at it, unfortunately. That's part of it. There's a reference to how, so here's the the tan gun shows up here on page 97, and the tan gun, so I mixed that up. The tan gun shows up here. So the tan gun shows up in 2333 as the weapon that they have to get to save, I believe, a planet. Here it shows up too as part of this game Hegemon that his daughter Story is playing, and she says it's for school, and it's one of the, and Soon believes it's one of the games that like Gloat creates for these schools where the kids test them out and they learn things about kids and learning and education and whatnot through that. He refers to it as the Arcades Project, which is a fun wink at Walter Benjamin. And in the Hegemon, he's like, what is the point of this? And she's like, you have to find the pieces of this thing called the tan gun, the ultimate weapon. The first one to put it together wins 50,000 gloatables and gets to rule the planet. So that seems to be the purpose of this game, which in its description, the first one feels like Asteroids a little bit, or like one of those kind of Space Invader-y games. What is another one? Galaxica. That's the one I'm thinking of, where your ship just kind of goes across the screen and you're shooting and avoiding things and picking up better guns or speed or whatever. Like the Galaxica is the one that I envision with that. And then the second one seems a little bit different because it has an avatar with like arsenal, and there's a lizard with a dozen legs charging at her, and it has all these abbreviations that they have, like KNO, which is knowledge, POW for power, GRI, which I forget, grit, AGI. What does AGI stand for? Oh, agility, ESP for ESP, and CHA for charisma.
But you still get KPG as the first three, right?
Yep. KPG, AEC.
Yeah, I don't know what the ACE is, but we get the initials again, KPG. It's popping up everywhere. Yeah, and the thing about the points, the one that he's talking about is referred to as SD points, or sex death points, which is a great little nod. He has a space at Gloat which they can go into, in which no technology works. That's called Eden, that they think will be they joke about it being the final unpinned space on the globe, which is interesting too. Basically like a Faraday cage. And then there's the mystery of the gold lettering ASS on the satchel, right?
Yeah, the satchel as a whole. So the satchel is the one that he comes away with thinking it's his satchel from that party found in last week's section. And that contains these dreams.
The manuscript.
The manuscript. And his wife's like, what happened to your satchel? He's like, well, isn't that it? And they're like, nope, this is not it. This is something else. There's gold ASS on it, which they don't know what that's referring to. And the manuscript is missing because the dog with his Dorchester disease, or if that's pronounced that way, depending on how close you are to Boston, I assume, that disease, he like hides paper products. So he can't find the manuscript. He's looking over, wants to read more of it. And then Sprout, the dog, is digging up under a tree, and he finds like dream number 2, irons out the pages, and then we get dream number 2, which covers years 1901 to 1909 in the Korea history. And that's like, this is really bulky in terms of like the setting forth these historical moments that are all accurate, I believe. I didn't look at all of them, but I think the majority of them are true.
It's interesting because as far as like I don't know, I went to public school, but as far as like American history goes, these are like the parts of American history and world history that aren't really taught. Like obviously Lincoln or Kennedy, but you don't really learn much about McKinley. Like it's a Jeopardy question. Like,
yeah, it was one of those that like I was like, yeah, this sounds really familiar, but like if you told me this was made up, I'd be like, that's okay. But
the same for Ito. Like, you think that'd be really important, but we learn about Ferdinand. Like, that's the one you learn about, right? Like, you don't. And there are all these assassinations that are taking place around this time, but we don't have we don't learn about those. It's a forgotten, like the way Korea is a forgotten war. Like, this is like a forgotten part of history that's very crucial that causes the ripple effect from it's quite astounding. And it's a absolute blind spot in my understanding of history.
Absolutely. And it is it is the moment in which politics and anarchy and all the kind of threads of that coalesce, because there's also a lot of situations
globalization, when you talk about whales and shrimps and stuff, that's
I mean, this is the first Russian Revolution taking place during this time. That's loaded with anarchists and assassinations and various other contrivances or conspiracies. So yeah, it's really interesting. The one I didn't look up, so Ito I know is real, is the third guy whose name I do not know at all. And I'm trying to look because I can't remember what it was. Stevens, Edward Stevens, is that right? Whatever it is, Stevens. He's one that I was not aware of. But all these people are involved in the way in which Japan rules over Korea. And the KPG, either directly or coincidentally or whatever, is sort of behind the scenes trying to liberate Korea from the Japanese. And the first assassination, the McKinley assassination, is done by someone who doesn't seem connected to KPG at all. He's more of a Emma Goldstein.
He's just a nobody.
Yeah, he's nobody, literally, is what he changes his name to. But of Emma Goldman, he's an obsessed and wants to change the world. So he assassinates McKinley with the gun hidden under his hand, under a handkerchief, goes up to him, blasts him during the shaking line.
Did you like the Polyphemus reference that he sprinkled in there for us?
Which way? No,
because he talks about McKinley having a monocle and calls him a cyclops, and then the assassin is nobody, right? I'm no man, right?
Yep.
Who took out your eye? No one did this to me. Nobody. Right?
No one did this. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So good. So he assassinates and is an anticipatory member of the Korean Provisional Government. So not directed by them, but is pulled into that. And then you have you also have Jack London shows up in this section in Korea. Has not great things to say about anyone. Just but generally they're it's interesting because it is, how to put this, they're the Koreans that are here in America that are lobbying for recognition, and there are the Koreans within Korea there's someone within the court that's secretly trying to get the other European representatives to pay attention to Korea. And then you've got this bastion of white male, primarily male writers and politicians who are this is great. How can anyone not like this? So they have the books that are written that are about Korea and about how Ito's the best thing for the country, and anyone who's aware of progress would appreciate this, and there's nothing wrong with it. And that's a book that's published here to sort of frame the Korea situation. You got Jack London going there and having his things to say. The woman that Isabel, what's her last name? Lucy Bird Bishop writes Korea and Her Neighbors. And she's actually a positive, because she says that she notes that Koreans have good physiques. The Koreans are certainly a handsome race, she writes. For this sign alone, she's the first non-Korean unanimously and posthumously inducted in the Korean Provisional Government, which is fun. But there's all these people kind of in play, both in terms of the politics and then the Cut Finger Club, in which Thomas Ahn decides that they're all going to cut off part of their finger to be part of this club and make a hand to take back Korea from the Japanese. And that at that point, that seems to be the beginning of this KPG and reality of their kind of truly directed activities. And that's where you start getting the codes of when and where to assassinate Ito. There's a mysterious figure, Bae, that's the female that's in the group that is at the assassination of Ito to make sure that all works out right. And there's more of that kind of nefarious machinations of what are they doing and how are they are connected to this world global political situation revolving around this one particular country leading up to World War I.
Sounds right. And we get some more James Bond references. That's
the next thing I was going to say is that it's teasing that we talked about it. And we have to admit that we omitted the most interesting thing about You Only Live Twice, which is that it was written by Roald Dahl.
Yeah, I looked that up after we recorded the podcast, and I started watching the movie again. I'm like, dude, this movie's as bad as I remember it. Holy shit, this is wow. But yes, crazy, right? And he was a pilot.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah, he was a pilot apparently. Didn't know that.
So weird, such a weird connection. But yeah, so we get more of James Bond. Do you have that section?
I don't have it pulled up, but yeah, it's about the Hawaiian actor who played Oddjob.
Yeah, it's on 135. And Goldfinger explains to Bond that he prefers Koreans because, quote, they are the cruelest, most ruthless people in the world, which is why he uses them as a statement. And Oddjob is like not Korean at all, but whatever. Harold Sakata, and he's like becomes not famous, but he has like commercials. And he does a commercial for cough syrup in which he just rampages because he can't stop coughing and punches through a door and gets the cough syrup. And like, this is that like very, I mean, it's very direct, but it's not too pedantic or too dogmatic, but of like the representation of Korea within Western media. This is one very clearly like not so great example of how that played out.
Well, just before that too, I mean, it says throughout their ignominious history, he claims Koreans have resolved things not by informed debate, but by simply killing the opposition. Even those who support Korean independence, he writes, should, quote, take some pains to clear their skirts of the taint of sympathy for the, quote, young ruffians in San Francisco. The missive headline is headline Koreans, a bloody race.
Yep. And that's from George Trumbull Ladd, who
opens up that section, right? The solution of the problem, right? What a very lovely title.
yeah, exactly.
Jeez, it's brutal.
So intense, but like it is. I mean, it's just like,
but it's very interesting because you kind of wonder where to like. You know, it's kind of like etymology. Like, where do these sayings come from? Where do these thoughts come from? Where do some of like the racist stereotypes come from? And this is, you know, I remember that line from Goldfinger, and I never thought of Koreans as like a brutal race or anything like that. And then you read this headline, right? Koreans, a bloody race. Like if this is this land way over across the ocean you don't know anything about, and you're just reading the headlines, and people are controlling the news and the information, that's what you're going to make your opinion.
Yeah,
that's how you build your opinion. And so I'm glad we don't have those problems today. if we go back to weather manipulation and
Jesus. Yeah, I looked at the About Us for this Druthers.net, and the About Us is like, it's not anything, which is super frustrating, but it's a picture of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 white people standing, like flexing and thumbs up and cheering for Canada's honest independent newspaper. Most loved independent people power newspaper. And then there's no information about its founding or any details whatsoever. So it's stupid. But like, this image is 1000% going to be the large image on the website for this particular episode. How the sausage gets made. So yeah, so they assassinate Durham Stevens is his name. I couldn't think of it, but Durham Stevens in San Francisco with two Korean nationals that aren't even really connected to one another, but they both go to assassinate him. They threaten him, one with a fake gun that looks real, one with a real gun that looks fake. And both Chun gets shot by Chang and dies, I believe he dies. And then Stevens lives, and they think he's going to recover, but then he dies as well. And so then Chang is like put on trial, which is part of this. So and then it leaves off like that's the Ito's assassination, those 3 assassinations, the cult of the cut finger, or not cult, I keep saying cult, but the cut finger club. And then one other thing that I want to preface without giving too much away is on page 148 when Thomas Ahn goes to the hotel and the Grand Hotel where he's going to go to the train station and assassinate Ito. He signs in as Taro Sujimoto, as under a Japanese name, and Taro Suzimoto is a real fake person. That's all I'm going to say. That's a name that you need to remember. And if anyone listening out there, you may already know the reference to this and may know who this real fake person is. But it's coming. I'm not going to give it away because like reading it in the book is more enjoyable if you don't actually know ahead of time. But just put a pin in. I also love that they're code breaking. I've been listening to this audiobook called The Deluge by Stephen Markley. That's all about like climate change in the future, and it's pretty depressing as shit, but like has some interesting characters. And one of the groups that's like, there's a group of people who are like blowing up, power plants and anyone who's like part of the fossil fuel industry to try and enact change. And they use like the Strand and what other book? Some other book that they use where everything's coded by like being able to read those. And here the codes come and are decipherable by wrapping them around your finger. So tying back into that finger motif, which is fun. Again, when I was a kid, I loved those kind of code shit and trying to figure out how that code shit gets solved.
Multiple choice, what is history? What do you think it is? Is it a vital lesson, amusement, the sum of symbols, or a record of pain?
Record of pain.
Is there an all of the above?
I immediately saw that and I was like, I underlined, what is history? Record of pain. Boom. That's it. 100%.
All right. Well, I got my line of the week lined up.
What is yours?
Well, I think mine goes with kind of the theme of what we're seeing and what's happening here with Echo. It's on page 101.
Okay.
His profile didn't mention same bed, touting only The Sins, the first of Echo's books on the slow press slate. The title surprised me again. No one knew I had wanted to call my second book The Sins, not Tanner and certainly not Echo. It was just a coincidence.
There's I marked another part of that where there's that Pynchon kind of vibe of like, is this coincidence or is it conspiracy? Yeah. So like, in 145, a year ago, Korean saboteurs derailed a train bound from Keiju to Fusan. One ran away. The other police believed that she was a woman based on their slender footprints in the snow. The other killed himself under arrest. He had no papers. He was a perfectly anonymous man, save for the fact that the top joint of his left ring finger was missing. So again, is it conspiracy or coincidence? My line of the week is on 137, and it goes without any notations. Singman sniffed that translation is no job for a gentleman.
Of course.
Could not resist. That is catnip. So next week, I was trying to get to like where we read to next week because we are like a significant part way through the book in terms of like our first two episodes. I think we slow down a bit here. Yeah. So for next week, we only go up to page 206. So it's like a 50-page section, which takes us literally just through one section of 2333, Harmony Holdings, 1977. So we'll be able to focus on that and expand that part next week. And in the meantime, I was just looking to find this on our website. I forgot. I wrote a long post about the 11 books that I'm going to be using in my class this spring. Although that's like most of my writing, that's like the rubric, but the real post comes before that and is about hoarding and being moved out of our offices and decision fatigue and how many books there are in the world and how everything's so much. But if anyone wants to read that, please do. It was fun to write something for the first time in, I don't know, months. I want to do more of that because it's fun, very fun. But otherwise, I've got nothing else to plug or talk about aside from that. I could go on about Shohei Ohtani's contract for easily an hour.
I don't think that's appropriate. It's better to talk about Lee going to the Giants because San Francisco and Korea connection, that's where it ends.
That's perfect. I'm excited. I can't wait to see how both of them do. Anyways, we'll see you next week. In the meantime, like us, subscribe, hit the subscribe button if you're watching us live on YouTube. But the podcast will be available tomorrow, wherever you get podcasts. And I am off to see Dan Wells from Biblioasis. So check in next week and talk to you all soon.
Biting my clothes to keep from screaming. taking pills to keep from dreaming. I want to break something